Hello and welcome to HairCraft&Color Salon. I'm Jen, I am the owner. I am starting this channel. Today's going to be my first video, so welcome. I have wanted to do a YouTube channel since probably 2006, 2007 when I started watching YouTube myself. I used to know nothing about hair and I hated to ask anybody to show me anything, so I started watching some hair and makeup videos on YouTube. Became addicted. Every day after school I watched it and I kind of fell in love with it. So as soon as I finished high school, went straight to beauty school, and I've been doing hair for over a decade now. I've had my own salon for about 3 years and I kind of wanted to start up my own channel to inspire anybody else out there who's interested in doing hair or other stylists. You know, I love watching everybody else's channel, their work, you know, what they like to do, their techniques. So I thought it'd be fun to start my own channel. I will take you step by step in coloring, formulation, cutting, everything. So I have kind of nicknamed my little makeovers Practical Magic Makeovers because I am obsessed with everything magical, mythical, and fun. So I guess just stay tuned, like and subscribe, and we'll get started. This is my cousin Gabby. We are going to be refreshing her hair. She had previous blonde that we did a long time ago. It's grown out. It's gotten dull from water and things like that. Kind of is on the ashier side right now, but with her skin tone, she needs a little bit of warmth. So if you go through, like I have my little test swatches here, these are ashy colors. Against her skin tone, it's a little too harsh, and especially obviously her natural is quite dark. So warm colors tend to look better on her. So these colors have a little bit more warmth to it. This is a better color palette for her. So what we're going to do is we are going to all over TZ Light, refresh, especially her ends. We want to make them nice and bright. We want to have a little bit of contrast still at her roots so it doesn't grow out very harsh. But we want to give it kind of like a more goldeny kind of tone because it will look better with her skin tone. But we're going to be very careful at the end since they have been previously lightened. We don't really have to go over them again because they've already been lifted. So we're just going to concentrate on more so the lift through here. A little bit through some of the ends that still have a little bit of depth, but we will just give some tonage to the old ends to brighten them back up. So previously we were a little bit shorter with her. It's grown out a bit, and she said she wanted to kind of take the length back up, which will take off quite a bit of the old color that we had in there. So I'm going to go ahead before we start. I don't want to waste any color, and make sure I take off ends that we're going to be getting rid of anyway, so you don't get confused or waste any product. Obviously this is in her full cut. We will perfect and do all of that once it is wet after we rinse out her color. Okay, so to start off, I only did about 30 grams of lightener. I'm using blue lightener, which cancels out any kind of warmth in the hair on its own, kind of neutralizes it. And then I'm only using 13 volume. I'm using the Color Touch Wella 13 volume. And I'm going to mix it. I like the ratio that's a little bit thicker, so sometimes you could use double if you like your lightener really runny. I do not. I think it just gets a little too messy. So I'm only going to put 40 grams of the developer just because I like it more of like a painting consistency. I just feel like personally I have a little bit more control. And yes, I'm using a very low developer, even with how dark her natural hair is. Since it's her natural, it's going to lift nicely on its own. I mean, I've done her hair before, so I know that her hair actually looks quite nice for how dark she is naturally. So 14 volume is plenty enough to start with, and we could always move our way up from there. And I'm going to start in the back of her head. And the first foils that I'm putting in, I mean, there's going to be a lot of foils on top of it. So it's going to have a lot of heat, not only from her head, but from it kind of being compacted. The foils are going to be compacted together. So it's going to produce a bit of heat on its own, so it's going to help with the lift as well. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start in the back, the nape of her neck. She has quite a bit of hair, so I don't want to like overload because I love dimension and I don't want it to be like solid. And again, that outgrowth would be a little too harsh. But we're going to start back here at a little bit of dimension, just at the very bottom. It doesn't have to be all the way when she pulls her hair up. We're just going to add some nice dimension. So for the very first pieces, since I'm not taking small sections, because her hair is very thick, the smaller the sections and the tighter together and the thinner they are, it's going to blend a little bit too much where you're not going to see much contrast. So since she has thicker hair and we want nice impact with the color, I'm going to take bigger sections. I'm going to take bigger weaves. And I'm going to go ahead and back comb it. The comb that I am using, I honestly couldn't tell you where I got it. It has little teeth in between the bigger teeth, which really helps with teasing. So I love to use this for when I do any type of back combing. And with her hair, I am going to foil everything just to help keep that heat in, and since we're using low developer. But I'm still going to do more of a painting technique just because I like it to be as soft as possible. So I'm going to concentrate most of the lightener through the mids to the ends here, and then I am going to feather up to that tease. Again, it doesn't have to be all the way up to the scalp because I want it to be a little bit more rootier. So I am going to fold it in. There we are. Same thing on this side. I'm going to take bigger kind of weaves, back comb, place my foil. And if you want, you see how some of these hairs kind of fall out. Not every section does that, kind of just depends. But if you get some of that fallout and you want to kind of clip it out of the way, you can take an extra clip and clip those little hairs out of the way. Again, concentrating the lightener mids to ends, really saturating, and then just lightly flicking it up. And folding it in there. Now, if you want even more high impact, what I'm going to do, because I want it to look a little bit more concentrated through the ends with the brightness, I'm going to flip these foils up, and then underneath I'm going to take a slice. Very thin, you know, you want it to be kind of see-through. Same thing with this slice. I want to really back comb. Place the foil just like before. But this is going to give a balayaged look where you're going to get a lot of pigmentation through the ends. This one, I'm going to concentrate the lightener a little bit lower. I'm not going to cascade as high, and I'm not going to cascade up all of them the same amount. I'm going to kind of go a little bit higher towards the outer corner and keep it a little bit lower through the inner corner. Again, mimicking balayage, but since her hair has quite a bit of depth, I like to put her hair in foils to make sure we have a nice, clean, even lift. Now I went ahead and did this other side off camera, but now I'm going to go ahead and connect in between. I'm going to do a horizontal section, kind of keep that connection. Even though I want quite a bit of dimension, I could continue to just go up the head this way, but with how dark she is, we have to do a little bit more foiling just to make sure we don't have too much pockets of depth. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and do I'm going to do a finer little weave, back comb, and this one I'm going to take all of it quite high up, and then I will do a slice just like I did before on the other two underneath. But the slice underneath I'm going to kind of take up in a V and leave some depth, a pocket of depth in the middle. This one I'm going to cascade all the way up, close to that root. So here, I'm just going to flip this up. If you want to really make sure that you keep some diffusion where you don't get any harsh lines, the slice that you take underneath, instead of just taking a slice like this, you could also kind of like weave in there, which is going to give it a little bit more of diffusion on top of the back combing and everything else that we're doing. Ahead and finish the whole back in that brick layer pattern. I am going to start working on the sides now. I continue to use the 13 volume developer all throughout the back because it's going to take us a little while to place the rest of the foils, and I don't want it to over process it all. But I'm also going to use that 13 volume developer all around the perimeter of the face. The whole hairline is the easiest to break, so I'm going to continue to use the lightest developer to make sure we keep the integrity of her hair. And then once we get a little further back away from the hairline, I'm going to bump it up just to 20. We don't need anything more than that. And I'm going to take everything in a diagonal back, and then I will come back as soon as we're finished. Okay, so now I did all of the framing around her face. I took very baby fine sections, no teasing this time, everything straight up to the root, all back-to-back baby lights with very, very tiny bits of hair in between. But just to kind of connect everything, because I went around her parting and on her natural hairline, but just to connect it right here, I went up the same amount of foils, but I'm going to do a little connection right here, and this is where I'm going to tease. I'm going to do horizontally across where her part is on each side here, just ever so very, very baby fine. And I'm going to do two back-to-back little teasy lights here to connect it, and then I'm going to up my developer. So you just take out a little bit of hair. I'm going to go ahead and place the foil. Again, it's a very fine section, but I'm going to go ahead and tease some hair up to the root. Make sure all that tease is out of the foil. And I'm going to go ahead and place that lightener. I'm going to avoid the old highlighted area. So this goes down a little further. I'm going to avoid the ends of that one right there. I'm going to cascade it up. Go ahead and pull that foil. I'm going to do one more just to make sure it's nice and connected. And then I'm going to go through up the developer and just connect it all the way up, and then we will process. So we just finished applying all of the foils. So since it's taken a little bit of time, we're going to check the back, see how it's processing, and it already looks beautiful. Let me bring you over here to see. I'm going to check these back foils here. If I can get this to focus. And it is nice and blonde. So that was just with 13 volume developer. It is cooked really well. So we're going to give it like 3 more minutes, and then we will go ahead and rinse the back because the back is ready. So we just rinsed out the back, no shampooing or conditioning or anything like that because we are going to tone. I'm going to go ahead and just spray a detangler throughout our hair since we did a bit of back combing. I'm going to use a wet brush, which if you've never used a wet brush, they're pretty life-changing. Really helps get out any type of tangles or knots or anything like that. So really help with back combing. Always start at the ends, work your way up. I don't know how well you can see kind of the tonage of the blonde right now. It does have a slight bit of warmth, but like we talked about from the beginning, we want to have a little bit of warmth. The toner is going to go ahead and make a big difference, but we do want to still keep a little bit of warmth. We didn't want to over process because we don't need it to a pale blonde, because I want to keep it more around a level 9. So we definitely made it to a level 9. So from here we'll wait for the rest to process, rinse all of that out, brush it through as well, and then I will bring you back once we're ready to apply the toner. All right, we just pulled out the rest of the foils. As you can see, we have it highly concentrated around her face. So that way when she pulls her hair back, she'll get a lot of pigmentation right around the face, but it's still gonna be very soft and blended. So we're gonna go ahead and wash this out. We're not gonna shampoo or condition yet because we are just gonna brush it out and put on her toner. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we are mixing the toner. So I have 2 separate bowls because I'm gonna do 2 different toners. Just for me personally, I always like the root shadow or the darker color. I put in a darker bowl. The ends I was keeping a clear bowl just so I don't mix them up. So right now I put in about 15 grams of 7.0. I'm just going to do like a little tiny root shadow. I don't want it to drag it down too much, but just because I want to help with her outgrowth and keep that like dimension in there, I am adding a tiny bit of 7.7. So we have 15 grams of 7.0. I'm going to add like 2 grams of 7.7 just because I want to keep, like I said, the warmth in there. Actually, I'm just going to do 1 gram. So total 16 grams. Now with the Wella toners that I use, the mixing ratio is 1:2. So I have to do double the amount for the developer. So I'm going to do 32 grams of developer for the root shadow. And then for her ends, I've kind of been deciding what I want to use. She's like right in between. She's like a level 10. It's still got a little bit of warmth. Some parts have a little bit of a 9 in there. Again, we want to keep the warmth. So I'm going to do 10.7.3, majority of the toner. So let's see. I'm going to do about 20 grams of 10.7.3 because I want to keep it as bright as possible. Then I'm going to do 5 grams of 9.03. So that's going to add a little bit of depth, a little bit of warmth, but not too much. I'm going to add a few grams of 996. So this is almost like a rosy tone. Let's see, I'm only going to add I'm going to add 5 grams. So the same amount of the 996. And then I like to mix a lot of different colors to make the perfect tone. So right now we're at 30 grams. I'm going to add 8 more grams, and this is 10.0. So right now we're at 38 grams total. Let me math for a second. So we need just about 80 grams of a developer. So I'm going to start in the back. I kind of have this section for it out of the way. We are going to start with the shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of lightly paint it on there. I'm sure it probably feels a little cold. And I'm just going to kind of tap it at the roots. We're going to comb it through. So we're going to blend the 2 toners together. I'm going to tap it and lightly, lightly drag it down. Now, I don't do this to add any more blurring effect because of the way that we placed the color, it is nicely blurred. But again, I kind of want to really blend her natural in with the blonde as much as possible. So this is just going to give a secondary tone in there, a nice little gradient where it's going to melt into that blonde. So again, it does not grow out harsh at all. She won't have harsh lines or have to worry about, you know, in 6 weeks that it looks like it needs to be colored already. Okay, so now I just finished applying all of the root shadow. So the way that I placed it around the face, I've kind of worked it down on a diagonal a little bit. I stayed away from the very, very front hairline because I want to do that last. Because again, not only does it damage the easiest and lift the fastest, but it will also absorb the toner faster. So that's the last place you want to apply the toner. So you could see a little bit of that gradient. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. I have the ends here all mixed up. I'm going to just start applying to the ends. And at first I'm just going to kind of apply midway down. I'm not going to intermix it with that root shadow quite yet because we are going to brush them through together. So again, it continues to just help with melding and melting the two together. So see, there's a little bit of a space there between the root shadow, which I have applied here. Here I left a little bit of a space. Here I'm going in with the ends. So I'm going to kind of do that all the way around. And then we will use actually a fine tooth comb. And again, this is why you need to keep your sections clean. You need to brush everything out seamlessly. Because again, I know brushing out teasing is kind of a pain. But if you tease very deliberately, not crazy, and you make sure everything's nicely brushed out, you should have no problems. But I'm going to use a fine tooth comb to meld them together, which on wet hair with color, you know, seems like it could be a pain. But again, clean sections, all of that helps. So I'm going to lightly kind of take this ends color and flick it up towards that root shadow. But again, they're not quite meeting yet. So everything has been applied and melted together with fine tooth comb. So now we're going to work on this little front hairline here. Again, only a slight bit has been left out, so I don't want anything to get on each other. So I'm just going to lightly dot the very roots. And then I will pull it back. And this is not going to sit on long at all, because again, it processes very quickly. So I'm just going to pull it back like this, lightly, lightly dot the very base. And there, in your ribbon. Just ever so lightly. This is the area we don't want too rooty at all, so we're just going to barely stipple that root. I'm going to keep it as bright as possible. And again, you could tell, because this is the most fragile bit of hair, how quickly this area has dried. It's always the first area to dry on someone's head. And I'm going to have her lean back in the bowl. I'm going to apply it through her ends, and then quickly we're going to rinse it out because it will absorb it fast. Okay, so now we got her all dry. She dries pretty straight naturally. Her hair is quite thick, so I'm just going to kind of lightly texturize the ends here. Then we will add a little bit of wave and tassel, and then we will be able to see the finished result. So as you can see, we got a nice like soft little beige tone. The front we kept nice and bright. Again, we didn't let that toner sit on for very long to keep that brightness in there and so it didn't over saturate. But then we got a nice little beigey blonde going on. It's nice and bright, but it's not too ashy because with her skin tone, again, we don't want an ashy tone. We wanted a little bit more of a beigey blonde. All right, here we go. Finish look. Got that brightness around the face. Nice little textured wave. That's nice and beigey blonde. You can see all that brightness throughout the ends, but still nice and dimensional. We did her makeup.
How you doing?
So this is the finished result. Let me spin ya. Got a nice little bob going on. Textured, brightened. I'll spin you around so you can see the back.